Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
Hi, Ryan.
Hey, Kiernan, how are you?
Living the dream. Thank you for asking. You know why I'm living the dream? Because today we are talking about jails that become tourist attractions.
Right, not about the times that we've spent in jail. That's a separate podcast.
Ryan, I have never been to jail. Have you?
I have never. I've never even visited.
Have you ever been arrested?
I've never been arrested.
Okay.
Not for lack of trying.
You've done some pretty devious stuff.
Yeah.
I do think, at the start, we probably should acknowledge, we feel like the current American criminal justice system is pretty screwed up.
It's pretty screwed up. Yeah. And I think that one of the saddest thing is not that many jails on my list are American. I included an American jail.
Yeah.
Because America builds jails so well. Yeah.
So many jails on your list that really you're far outpaced me as far as jail visits. But I am reminded before we head into the clink, we have to get to the quest for a tagline.
I have a couple good options this week that I've really put a ton of time into.
Yeah, this is your week. So we've been through a couple rounds. We have one in the maybe pile. Just to remind listeners, Out of Office, a travel podcast, this seat taken.
Right.
Very sexy.
Mine
it might be too sexy.
I definitely think it's too creepy. I don't know about sexy.
Well, I was about to say maybe too sexy for us, but creepy kind of fits our brand.
Yeah, it's definitely on brand if the brand is creepy.
All right. And, I'm thinking maybe we decide on a tagline by Christmas. I think maybe Santa brings us a tagline.
And I think listeners can reach out if they have tagline ideas. They shouldn't leave all the heavy lifting to me because I know you're not going to come up with this tagline.
Listeners should definitely reach out to Ryan. I'm good. If we find some good ones between now and then, I think we should settle on Christmas, though. We will in our stocking will be stuffed a tagline.
The Christmas present we're giving the listeners is a new tagline for Out of Office.
And nothing else.
Yeah, nothing else.
Maybe a special episode.
Yeah, and if they pay us, we'll give them a T-shirt with that tagline on it.
Fantastic.
Anything is possible.
I am going to sit back. I'm going to be the client here, and you're going to pitch me these taglines. I'd like it if you acknowledge the strengths and weaknesses. I feel like that's an important part of the process.
There's just so many strengths in my brand pillars that.
All right, let's go.
Okay. Out of Office, a travel podcast. Travel is forever. Because everything else you buy is like ephemeral, right? You buy a meal, it's gone. I guess, but travel, it sticks with you.
But usually travel is very limited. It's a weekend or a week or two.
Yeah, but the joy of travel is forever,
I mean, I am joyful when traveling, but if anything, I think I'm more miserable when I'm home because I'd rather be traveling. I'm out having a great vacation. So right. I would say travel is temporary.
For us, travel is eternity, but for other people, travel is temporary.
Travel is temporary. I mean, I actually think that travel is temporary sounds like sort of a modern art piece. I think it makes us sound mysterious, sort of weird and sensitive. So I would put travel is temporary in the maybe, travel is forever in the no.
Okay. I'm going to veto travel is temporary. Just because it wasn't my idea. So we can move forward.
Interesting. Usually in a client meeting, I don't veto what the client approves, but go ahead. Sure. All right.
Out of Office, a travel podcast. Next stop, travel.
Next stop, travel. So you're repeating travel from the line directly before it, and you're repeating stop from our regular last segment.
Well, I am. I think teasing the fact we have a segment called The Last Stop, which a lot of folks think is our strongest segment. So,
do a lot of folks think that?
They do. A lot of people say.
Everybody is saying. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I think a next stop travel. What's the first stop?
The first stop is a podcast that they're listening to, and then the next stop is travel.
Okay, so what if we change the original and you go, first stop, Ryan Davis. Next stop, Kiernan Schmidt. Third stop, out of office.
I don't know how you can make an idea so bad. I think the idea was simple. I think folks connected with it. We're going to hear a lot of support for it. So
fifth stop, a travel podcast. Next stop, travel, and then the last stop.
Yeah.
So it's almost as hard as riding the real subway just to get through to the podcast.
Yeah, well, if you make it super subway related, folks are not going to be happy with it. You know?
So again, you're saying save it for a subway specific episode. We've got Ding 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 Went the Trolley. That's for the trolley episode. I'm still working on a funicular song. Right. And this one, maybe this is a subway episode.
Yeah, I think for a subway episode, that would be something we should think about.
All right. Well, I thought this was going to be more collaborative, but go ahead. We're gonna push this into the no pile.
Are you really going to push that into the no pile?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Out of Office, a travel podcast. What we all want in life is to travel, fall in love, and be happy.
Fall in love and be happy.
Yeah.
It's a lot of words.
It is a lot of words. It's not my fault because this is from a Tumblr called Travel Slogans.
Wait, Brian.
What?
You were supposed to create these. The act of creation is part of it. Do you think
curating other great travel ideas?
No, that's
share
stealing.
with their listeners.
What you call curating, I call stealing.
I have a whole lot of them. They have 95 of these pins on this. Yeah.
Okay. Wait, they fit all of that on a pin?
Pin. That's the name of the social piece of content.
Like Pinterest?
Yeah, exactly.
You're looking on Pinterest for our slogan? Good God.
I am on Pinterest.com/travel for food.
Oh,
so
God. All right.
Shout out to those folks.
Repeat it one last time, please.
What we all want in life: to travel, fall in love, and be happy. And then they add, not necessarily in this order.
Oh, brutal. Could we get something about a podcast or listening or something that has to do specific to us in there?
Yeah.
Okay, do it. yeah, we could do that. Okay, let me hear it.
Here's another one.
No,
I'm going to throw one more out.
Okay, this is desperate.
I've abandoned that. All right, so Out of Office, a travel podcast. Let's get away from it all. Whoa. Right?
First of all, I think that person needs to seek some serious medical attention.
Wasn't yours like abandon everything? Wasn't that like...
What is it? Get away from it all?
Let's get away from it all.
Let's get away from it all.
Like get away from the news, get away from the tweets, and travel and just get away from it all into some other place that is not part of it all.
I think I'm ready to get away from the segment for now.
I think everyone will be.
But by Christmas, we are going to have just a beautiful plum pudding, and we're going to slice that plum pudding open, and there's going to be a juicy, juicy slogan right inside there for us.
Okay, and with that strange metaphor, I think it's time to take off.
Tell the cabin crew.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
All right, that sound, of course, means we are jumping into our topic of the day. Ryan, since you're the one who seems obsessed with this, why don't you introduce us?
Today we're going to be talking about visiting jails and serving some hard time. That's Kieran's copy. I didn't write that.
No, that did not write that.
We're going to talk about some of the jails that we visited, some of our favorites, and one of them that I've actually visited is still in use. So that's going to be interesting.
To be clear, most of these are your list. I haven't visited as many jails as you have. Seems like you might be preparing for your future life. Trying to get some tips and tricks.
Well, I just like to see how far we've come.
But also, you actually have one active jail.
I have one active jail. That's sort of the most interesting of the selection here. Yeah, the batch.
And then the rest are jails that have been sort of turned into tourist attractions.
Right. Or historic jails.
Right. Or they have taken on a new life in some other form.
Perhaps that's some of your lists, but mine are all...
I got one that has taken on a brand new life. One might say it was reformed from when it was a prison.
Well, I can't... I'm looking forward to hearing about that. So the first jail I want to talk about is the old Greensboro jail. This is a very small jail from 1807 that is in Greensboro, Georgia. And it's 2 stories tall. It basically has 3 windows up front. It's made of granite, and the walls are 2 feet thick.
Oh, wow.
And it is a very kind of dank and depressing little jail. And to actually visit it, you have to go into town hall, which is, a 5-minute walk away. You have to speak to some old guy there, and he hands you these keys to the jail, and you give him your driver's license, and you walk back, and you kind of have a private.
What kind of key?
Moments.
Big key, weighty key, like an old-timey key?
It wasn't as rusty as you want it to be. It was probably from the 1970s, not the 1870s.
Do you feel like if you were behind the bars and a warden was walking by and you were going to clip that key off his belt, would you be able to do it without him noticing?
No, because the windows are too tall. I mean, it's not a very open structure. So if you're in that structure, I have a hard time figuring out how you're going to get out of there.
When you unlock, does it make a big...
It most definitely makes a noise when you open the door. Because it's a thick, I actually think it would make a nice little cocktail, like hipster cocktail lounge. But yeah. And it did not bring this up to the city clerk.
Put it. I'm sure that they have a wonderful website. What brought you to Greensboro for this? Were you going specifically to see this jail?
No, I was visiting a friend and his family, and he owns a little B&B in Greensboro. Mm-hmm. And when I was going through the list of things to see, there isn't a ton, but the jail is on that list.
And if you were in the jail, how would you escape?
I don't think you would be able to escape it. Like the walls are that massively
secure?
Thick. The windows are very small. It was claustrophobic even to visit it. It wasn't like, it wasn't big like some of the jails I'll talk about later.
Huh.
And you lock the jail up and return the key, and you get your driver's license back. So it's just you in the jail and a little plaque out front. And if you Google and you try to find more information out about it, there isn't like a ton.
What they should do is, when in movies you see people released from jail and they get a box of everything that they came in with,
right?
They should make you put out your shoes, your wallet, not just your license, everything you have on you, and then they should hand it back to you in that box, and then throw you out the gate and have it clink closed, and it's like you're starting a new life after visiting the jail. All right. Okay. Well, because I don't have nearly as many as you, sort of a good contrast to the tiny Greensboro jail is here in Boston. There's something called the Liberty Hotel. And that name is meant to be sort of funny because it is built from a former jail. It used to be called the Charles Street Jail. It was in use in the 1800s. And to your point about yours was very kind of stuffy and small. Right. And this one was built on what they called the Auburn system.
The Auburn system
emphasized fresh air and light and work. But the work was meant to be done in silence all day long. So you could work in groups, but you could never speak to each other. And like in one step, this is like a little more humane than a lot of other prisons at the time because everyone was in solitary confinement. But in other instances, it still wasn't too plumb.
It doesn't sound very plumb.
Then I'm describing it accurately.
Yeah, I don't think any of the prisons we're going to talk about today, or the jails we're going to talk about today, were places you'd want to spend any time.
No, agreed.
So the Liberty Hotel in Boston.
So it's interesting. It's got so now it's like quite ritzy. To your point about like turning the other one into a cocktail bar. I mean, this one is now kind of a hipster hotel.
Gotcha.
I would say it's a little kitschy for my taste. There's a lot of chains on the chandelier. The restaurant is called Clink. The bar is called Alibi.
The restaurant is really called Clink?
Yeah, it's called Clink. Gosh. There are some sections of bars preserved throughout, but it's definitely, to me, it's a little too kitschy. I don't think they have some instances where they're recognizing the past, but by and large, it's really more of a Disney. It's like Disney's take on jail.
Yeah, that's different than a lot of the jails that you can go visit that have been turned into more historic sort of you learn about the history of the jail, and usually there's some reflection on the things that happened there.
Well, and particularly this one is pretty interesting because the people they locked up, they actually had some notable folks, including Sacco and Vanzetti were there. Suffragettes who were protesting Woodrow Wilson when he was visiting Boston were locked up for 8 days in this prison.
8 days.
And World War II German prisoners of war were housed.
They brought them all the way to Boston?
Well, I think they were U-boats. So
gotcha.
I think they were actually caught approaching the U.S. I'm not sure quite where, but I think the Liberty Hotel could do a much better job. I mean, I know if I were staying there, I would be much more interested in the history of where I was staying. I think that they could kind of, tip their prison cap to that a little bit more.
Yeah, but they do have some nice stylish. I bet they have some cutesy names for the cocktails at the bar there.
Oh God, I didn't even think to look of it. I guarantee you. Okay, quickly, if you were hired to name prison-themed cocktails, what would they be? Got to be toilet moonshine. It's going to be a bestseller. The Shank.
The Shank.
The Shank would be very good. The old ball and chain.
Yeah, you're good at this.
Thank you. Good at terrible kitschy names. The warden's pet. That would be for like a more sexy cocktail.
Yeah, or like the warden's juice, something like that.
What's the warden's juice?
I don't know. What's the warden's pet? I just think like something the warden would give you.
The warden's pet would be like the prisoner that the warden loves.
That's the kind of prisoner you would be for sure. By the way.
And then no. You would definitely have a cocktail called the Soap. And then, of course...
don't drop it.
Yeah, exactly. The waiter would hand it to you, and you go, it's slippery. Don't you drop it. And everyone at the table would go, we should have stayed somewhere else.
Well, to transition into another restaurant, this isn't actually a restaurant in Cardiff, Wales that I went to, and it's called The Clink. And it's got
the same name as the Liberty Hotel.
Exactly.
Yeah, nightmare.
This is a restaurant that is in a functioning prison, and it is run by actual prisoners.
Wow, really?
Folks who are in the prison. So when you go, you make a reservation, and you have to go. You basically go to the prison, and you go to the Clink, and it is a quote unquote fine dining, actually pretty good food, served by men who don't usually look like the kind of men who serve you fine dining. Some pretty strong, serious looking Welsh.
Yeah, you could probably order some pretty heavy meals. It'd be fine. They'd carry right to do reps with it while they come and serve it.
Yeah.
Are the cooks and chefs, are those also prisoners?
Every single person who works there, with the exception of the lead chef, is a person who is currently in the prison. And they have worked to get. This is like a program where you learn a skill, and the trade is fine dining.
Yeah, that's excellent. I love that.
It's pretty cool, right? And apparently they run the same organization runs a handful of other prison restaurants around the UK. They're called the Clink Charity, and we'll link to them in the show notes.
I feel like that could be, I feel like you could have a prison hairdresser and go and have your hair cut by prisoners.
Yeah, or dental work, like pretty much anything.
Again, if they're working out enough in the yard, yanking a tooth would be like nothing. They could probably take your whole jaw out.
I think it would be cheap. So teaching skills.
Sure. Yeah. It doesn't have to be cheap. Maybe you could put it into a rehabilitation fund. I don't know who's dictating the price here. I'm not sure why you assume we would be cheap.
No, and the Clink was not, by the way, cheap, and it was difficult to get reservations to. I had to use some of my own tricks.
Oh, you want to refer back to past episodes?
I had to shoplift to get in there. I'm like, woo, take me to the Clink.
And they're like, you're on table 4. And what other services could be provided? Dental, I think, is good. Tailor. Definitely a tailor, especially if you like pinstripe suits. You just turn those stripes right the other way.
But there are some ethical implications to having prisoners do some kind of work. Like, certainly like the firefighters in California, that's some weird stuff going on.
Yeah. Well, putting them in danger, for sure. But what you're describing, what I'm trying to describe are, they're they're trying to arm them with skills.
Yeah.
Arm them with just skills. Just
But there are certain kinds of danger to preparing foie gras, that you don't have battling forest fires. There's a moral danger, perhaps. I don't know.
And I also think the compensation point's important. I think they shouldn't be working for free.
No, and there's a whole bunch of info on that on the website. They're definitely getting paid. They're getting hours. They're getting reference. I mean, it's a program where you could leave the clink and you could go work at a pretty upscale restaurant because you've worked at a popular upscale restaurant before.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Europe is a lot better about trying to arm prisoners with skills that they can then take into a life post prison, as opposed to the U.S.
Yeah, I think the European systems are more about rehabilitation than punishment.
I mean, pretty much the only jobs I know of in U.S. prisons, and these come from movies and TV.
Making license plates.
Making license plates, that was one. And the second one was one guy gets to push around the library cart.
Oh, the library cart would be such a good job, though.
I totally agree. The library cart. And in fact, you as a person who likes to carry around books to make people think you read them, you could push around a little cart and people would assume you'd read the whole cart.
I would have the best curated little library cart in any prison in North America.
I think that would be a very a rich and sustaining job for me. So if God forbid I end up in prison, I would like, and if the lawyers and everyone listening back to this, please give me a chance on the cart. I promise I will do a good job. I will make recommendations. I'll ask people what type of literature they enjoy. I'll try to find a match. Right. And I think I'll have like a little, after I give somebody their book, I'll give them a wink and go, happy reading. Happy reading. It's charming.
Let's hope that you avoid prison.
Let's hope. God, from your mouth to God's ears.
What's number 2 on your list, Kieran?
So I have gone to, I think it's pronounced Hoa Lau Prison in Hanoi. And this is
this the Hanoi Hilton?
Hanoi Hilton, exactly.
Wow.
So this is Hanoi Hilton, of course, was sort of a tongue-in-cheek name that the American prisoners of war gave it during the Vietnam War.
Wait, so it wasn't a brand Hilton? It wasn't
now it is, of course. Yeah, the owners of Liberty Hotel had such success, it is a extremely serious and depressing place to visit. Because Vietnam is still communist, and there isn't necessarily a full accounting of the dark deeds that were done there. It does reference the war, for example, as the War of American Aggression. The audios and visuals that they show of Americans there are them, playing games or bringing chickens in from the yard. It's not sort of, laying around in these confined conditions. They do have on display John McCain's flight suit.
Wow.
That he went down in. It is currently on display.
How did they know to keep that? How did they know that would be like a major historic?
But that is a question I do not know the answer to, and I think that often about so many things. You go to a small historic society, they've got this is a George Washington's left glove.
Yeah.
Who was preserving that?
But you knew George Washington was going to be George Washington. John McCain was was not a celebrity at that time.
I didn't know George Washington was going to be George Washington. I don't know. I still think it's a mixed record. Mixed,
we can have a whole discussion about that. I tend to agree with you. But
I mean, George for king, George the First has quite a lovely ring. How they kept it, I don't know. Or maybe John McCain kept it and returned it in time.
That's possible. It was a big deal when him and John Kerry went together to Vietnam to normalize relations.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, the whole complex is not preserved, but the area in which they have the museum pieces is pretty well preserved. But as an American, it gives you some pretty complicated feelings because the way they recount the war is very different, and the fact that it doesn't have a true accounting of the tortures that we know took place there. I mean, similar to some of these places that we're talking about. I mean, the Greensboro prison didn't have, you didn't mention any writing, any exhibits or anything, right?
No, it has a little bit of information, but they go out of their way to not delve into the history, and which I can only assume is pretty horrifying.
Yeah, it's funny because in the examples we've given, I'm not sure that we've hit one where that balance is struck in like a respectful way.
The next two I'm going to talk about, which are both in, one's in Ireland and one's in Northern Ireland, they both really deal heavily with the history of, the history of what happened there.
All right, hit it, because my list is out. Those are my two prisons.
So we got the HM Prison, Crumlin Road, and that is in Belfast. And it's...
Sorry, HM? Like Her Majesty's?
Exactly. Yeah, HM, Her Majesty's Prison, Crumlin Road. Known affectionately as the Crumb. And this is...
By whom?
Folks who... I mean, now it's a multi-purpose center, so they have like weddings and stuff there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was where Prince Harry was thinking of getting married, potentially.
Really?
No.
Oh no! I mean, it's stunning.
No, but he does affectionately refer to it as the Crumb.
Yeah,
a
lot of folks do.
Yeah.
It's one of the only, if not the only, Victorian era prison that remains in Northern Ireland, and it's a really massive complex. And I had one of those guides when I went, who just was like an A+ guide. So they had two separate wings, one for the Catholics and one for the Protestants, because there was a time when those folks didn't really get along.
So in one wing, they're transubstantiating that host left and right.
Yeah,
and the other wing, they're like, it's symbolism. That's not the body of Christ. It's still a piece of bread. Oh, well, it's still a piece of bread, don't you see?
Butter side up, butter side down. So yeah, they're absolutely doing that still. But they one of the things they did share was they shared the hanging room. What brings folks together more. And one of the at the tour sort of climaxes where you were led to the room where you would have been if you were a prisoner in your last couple days, and it is feels like a nice studio apartment in Belfast. It's got a lot going on. It's larger.
It's probably bigger than most studios you get in New York.
Yeah, it's not bad. You only get to stay there a few nights, but it's not bad. But you never leave that room again once you go in, because there's another door that you push, and that is where they actually did the hanging. So they do the hanging beyond the sort of nicer kind of cell that you stay in for the last couple of nights. And when we walked in, he did this whole thing where he basically talked through what would have happened. It was like a 4-minute monologue. It was sort of stunning. And then he pulled the lever that would have opened the gate. And they hung 17 men in that room, both Catholics and Protestants, while the prison was in service.
So the hanging wasn't like a super, super, super common thing. If it only 17 in the whole life of the prison.
No, I mean, it wasn't Texas in 2018. No, so they outlawed that kind of activity.
And in the 4-minute monologue, what was he detailing? Like what food they would be given, clothing? Would they be shown their family members?
Who would be present? What they would say? What they would be offered? What the warden would say, and then the masked man would enter, and then.
Masked Man. They did the Masked Man.
They did. I asked. I was like, "Did you guys do the Masked Man?" And they said, "Yeah." They would have somebody come in that was not from either side of the troubles, so that person wouldn't be seen. It would be seen as more of an impartial.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't know who it was. It wasn't somebody who was like, he's
hangman.
Exactly.
Wow.
The HM hangman. Yeah.
Jeez. Some days when you don't feel like doing your hair, putting the makeup, that wouldn't be a bad gig. Throw the hood on.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wish my job came with a hood. Actually, Mark Zuckerberg's job came with a hood for a while. So, Ryan, if you found yourself on death row and they said, last meal, anything you want, do you know what you would get?
Yes, surf and turf.
Surf and turf.
Yeah.
God, you knew that right away.
Oh, because I've had this. This is one of my early date discussions, and it's definitely
so romantic.
Yeah, well, no, because I like food. It is definitely surf and turf, and maybe with like a seafood platter prior to that. So not just the lobster, but I want to have the oysters. I want the shrimp. I want sort of everything.
I feel like I'm all right with the turf. The surf, I feel like you're gonna get butter and juice all over yourself. I feel like you'd be a mess. I want to.
I want to be a mess.
Oh, not me. I want to be spick and span. I want to be looking my best just before I go. I think for me, I think it's ramen. Ugh.
Ramen?
Yeah.
You want to be executed hungry. You want the last sound you hear to be your stomach rumbling.
Well,
45 minutes after you've had a bowl of noodles.
Wait, what? What ramen are you eating?
Unbelievable. Yeah.
No, I want a ramen with maybe a little pork in it. I want it spicy, and I just want to. Do you think that's going to make a nice audio experience?
I can only imagine how terrible ramen would have been in an Irish prison, and I don't think that's what they would have done well, or even here. But maybe in.
Oh well, we asked the chef. He said he did the best he could. So you got a little bit of cabbage water, and we've put a little corned beef on the top. There's your ramen. Is that the Irish ramen you were thinking of?
That is the Irish ramen. Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. Yours went on forever. I'd like some steak. I'd like some lobster, and then a smorgasbord from the ocean.
I would like the meal to be as long as possible. I want to stretch it out.
Keep it coming.
Keep it coming.
Several days or weeks.
So my last jail is actually in Dublin. So close to Belfast.
So I can keep doing the accent.
Would be very different because in Northern and Irish accent and an Irish accent, very different.
Yeah, no, that's true. I'll do my Northern versus Southern. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks.
It's a Kilmainham jail, and this is where the revolutionaries from the 1916 Easter Rising were imprisoned and eventually executed by the British. And it's another sort of incredible guided tour of this big old place that has not been turned into a conference center, unlike the one in Belfast, where you can both tour the jail and attend a tech conference. You cannot do that. And what's the difference?
So it's like it goes from hoods to hoodies.
Exactly. Exactly.
That could be their marketing material right there. I noticed this one didn't have the Her Majesty's before it. Her Majesty not as big a fan of this one.
Well, it's in Ireland.
Right.
Oof, man.
So it should be like the Popes.
The Popes.
Yeah.
John Paul's jail.
I mean, he was quite old by the time he died. He very well could have known this jail.
Totally.
And is it jail? Jail?
It is not. It's jail. GAOL.
It's so old timey.
I know.
It's like ye old.
Yeah, and the one we talked about in Georgia also is a GAO.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's all 1807.
That's good. It's good for search engine optimization if you've got both on that page.
It really is.
Absolutely.
It really is. So yeah, it is a great place to go, and you get a lot of background on the IRA, the Easter Rising, and unlike the jail in Belfast, which I think they definitely cover like a lot of that history. They don't have like the Eastern Rising, revolutionary sort of stories and stuff that the jail in Dublin has. So,
do you see two different narratives between sort of the British and the Irish telling?
They both seemed pretty fair. I imagine this has been like talked about. They've really worked this out, how they discuss both of the troubles, and everybody seems to want to put it behind them. Although in Belfast, when you go to the peace wall, it's very quick people to call out that there's this wall still separates the Protestant and the Catholic neighborhoods, because there's still some nights when a bunch of guys will beat each other up on one side or the other. So transubstantiation is still a hot issue.
It's so hot
in Belfast. But so in Dublin, yeah.
And I think the Troubles would also be a good name for a prison cocktail.
Most definitely, yeah. So, random piece of trivia here. The HM prison Crumlin Road in Belfast is also known as Europe's Alcatraz. And I think you and I share an experience of not being able to visit Alcatraz no matter how hard we have tried.
Yeah, no. Alcatraz is run by the National Park Service now. And of course, it is on an island. Yes. And so you have to book tickets before, and you got to get a boat to get out there.
Right.
And I visited San Francisco and was trying to get in there. Same story.
Several times, yeah.
Yeah. And several times. For me, it was just the once, but I remember I was booking like far in advance and was very surprised that I couldn't get a ticket.
I tried to book far in advance, and then I tried to book farther in advance, and then I tried the day of, and I failed at all those different ways.
That's a nightmare.
It really is. It really is.
It used to be that people wanted desperately to get out of Alcatraz. Now we can't even get on it.
Yeah, we can't even get on it. The only thing they could do to make it more popular is to stage an immersive production of Hamilton in Alcatraz with Lin-Manuel.
Of what? Of Hamilton?
Of Hamilton.
I think a live-action Shawshank Redemption.
Ooh.
You right?
Yeah, there must be like an opera or something.
And actually,
they did a Dead Man Walking.
And at the end, you could all go into the water. It's a true immersive experience.
Oh my God.
What? Listen, you're the guy who pays like $80 a ticket to go to these things, all right?
I think with that, it's time for the last stop.
Oh, the last stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
All right, we are here at the very last stop of this train.
Your favorite segment.
My favorite segment. What is this segment, Kieran?
So the last stop is, for all our new listeners, we can see hundreds of thousands at this point, hundreds of thousands of new listeners. The last stop is where Ryan and I each discuss one thing that this week really fed our wanderlust. What did we read, see, smell, taste that got us just hungering for travel and kept the spirit of travel alive? So Ryan, do you have one this week?
I do. I have one this week. I have been reading a lot of Murakami.
As always, I have to disagree with you. I can tell that that approving look on your face says that you're so excited to brag about having carried around this book all week.
I just finished Killing Commendator.
That's the new one.
That's the new one.
Uh-huh.
And it's about a 30-something artist. So, I obviously identified.
Oh, you remember being 30?
And his wife leaves him. Something that has never happened to me. And he decides to sort of go up into the Japanese mountains, and he gets a house there, and he starts sort of painting. And it's magical things happen, obviously, because it's a Murakami novel.
The magic. That's so. Is this the first Murakami you've read?
No, this is the second. The first I read was a series of short stories called Men Without Women. And then I am halfway through an earlier novel of
Men
his.
Without Women. That must have spoken to you too.
I mean, I definitely identified. And then I'm reading.
For new listeners, Ryan is a gay man.
Thank you, Kieran.
Well, they may not. They might not have understood.
I do
joke.
talk about Broadway.
Well, we both do that.
That's true. Well, yeah, And now I'm reading Norwegian Wood, which is an older novel of his. That the character also takes a bus ride into the mountains of Japan. So the way that he's been describing these mountains and the weather, and I just feel like if I'm ever going to become a portrait painter, I'm going to have to spend some time in rural Japan.
Have you been to Japan?
I've never. I've been to the Tokyo airport.
That doesn't count.
For a layover.
I feel like that's a rule on the podcast. Airports don't count as having visited a place. No,
I did.
Because I was listening to a woman do an interview who she's trying to visit every country in the world.
Right.
And she's counting just landing in an airport to transfer and take off, which is just silly.
That doesn't make any sense. You can't count that. No,
I
had some incredibly disappointing sushi in the Tokyo airport, though.
Wow, that's actually a surprise because so much good food exists in Tokyo in train stations in commuter areas. So I would have thought, absolutely. Oh my gosh, you can get these amazing ramen places, yakitori places directly underneath like the lobby for a train station, and they're fantastic and affordable.
Well, I was disappointed in my airport sushi. So.
Well, you have things to look forward to. So you got the mountains, the weather from Murakami, and then food and train stations.
Yeah. So if folks have places in rural Japan that they have visited, please let me know. I would love to hear some.
Yeah, let Ryan know. I'm good. So I have only read Kafka on the Shore, I like magic realism, but for me, sometimes it just came off as weird for the sake of weird.
Yeah, I think that the first half of the novel, there's no magic in it, and those are my favorite parts of the novel.
Well, and actually, that short story collection does not have a ton of magic in it, right?
Yeah, I don't think there's any magic at all in that short story collection.
Yeah.
And then the Norwegian Wood, the novel I'm reading now, also doesn't have any magic in it. I looked specifically. I said, what are his most non-magical books? And then I'm.
So you agree that the magic, sometimes it just doesn't really ring your bell?
Yeah, but I'm like incredibly not fun. So I don't like to read about magic.
Great. So tell your friends about the podcast.
No, I can't read. I don't like to read fantasy. I can barely read sci-fi anymore because I scoff at everything.
Really? See, no, I like those genres. So it's not that piece of it that doesn't speak to me. I remember in Kafka on the Shore, there's a character where he's constantly killing cats, and it revolted me.
Is that a metaphor or?
I mean, I'm sure it's some sort of metaphor. And, I'm a Harvard English major. I should be able to appreciate these things. Can you believe we got to episode 7 without me mentioning that I went to Harvard? It's pretty shocking.
It is.
I'm pretty proud.
We might even cut it from this episode.
No, that's the one part. That's my last stop. Oh, I remember back at Harvard. No, but I've been trained in the literary arts. And I understand that his writing is beautiful. His descriptions are gripping, and I understand why it does feed your wanderlust. It is a beautiful and interesting portrayal of Japan. But
a shout out to the incredible translators.
Oh yeah.
He must have really talented people who are doing the translations, but it doesn't read at all in any kind of stilted way. It is beautifully.
Well, I think. To be a good translator, you have to be a good writer yourself, because some part of it's going to come down to interpretation of the language, not just straight translation.
Exactly.
You can't, otherwise Google Translate would be doing it for us.
Oh gosh, I can't even imagine how terrible that would be.
I mean, we're probably like a year away from that. All right, my last stop is a piece of gear. I think maybe this is the first gear we've done.
You are such a vacation gearhead.
I am a vacation gearhead. I'm a gear guy. I love getting a new piece of gear, and I enjoy putting it on a shelf and looking at it because it makes me anticipate. It's kind of like we were talking on passports as sort of an object that gets you excited for the vacation. That's how I feel about gear. And now this one's a little more utilitarian than some of the fun pieces of gear. It's called a Camry 110-pound luggage scale with temperature sensor. Fantastic.
It's a luggage scale?
So it's a luggage scale because Catherine and I have tickets for a discount airline, Wow Airlines.
Wow.
Yeah, you walk on the plane, you go, wow, this thing's going to fly. And so because the tickets are so cheap, of course, like Spirit Air, like any of these discounts, they charge you for, every kilogram above their limit that you can get on your check-in and your carry-on. And so we have to be very, very careful. So this is a small, it basically looks like a handle. It looks like a handle of a pump or like a luggage case with a sort of sling underneath it. And what you do is you attach the sling to your suitcase and then you lift it off the ground with both your hands and it tells you how much it weighs. It dangles and it tells you how much it weighs. And it's super convenient because you can pack it with you and make sure that when you're coming back, you're also hitting the weight limits.
And you guys don't have like a scale in your apartment.
Well, I mean, look at us. You think we need a scale? I mean, we're Adonises over here. No, we don't have a scale. But also, I have used a bathroom scale before. Mm-hmm. And found that to get the weight to balance right and to make sure that one wheel isn't hitting the ground, it has been hard. Whereas this, you lift it off the ground. And so you're getting the full weight that they're going to get at the airport.
So you're going to take this thing with you when you go to...
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So has it occurred to you that on the way back, when you weigh the bag, if it's too heavy, you might have to leave the scale behind?
Oh, wow. Real catch-22, this scale. No, that hadn't occurred to me. But actually, its lightweightness is a great feature that I should be calling out. The Camry 110-pound luggage scale with temperature sensor.
And this is not made by Toyota. They've just taken the name Camry.
No, yeah, it's Camry, Camry. We will put it in the show notes. What I do think is very funny is that they put a temperature sensor in it.
So what is it?
Like, It serves no practical purpose
Wait,
whatsoever.
so it tells you how hot it is in the apartment while you're weighing
in
your
the
luggage?
apartment while you're weighing. I feel like clearly they were sitting around there going like, what's one other cheap feature we could throw in here? I'm shocked that there's not like a flashlight on the side. It's a little Swiss Army knife that comes out the back.
USB charger. That would be useful.
Actually, I wouldn't hate a beer opener. That wouldn't be too bad.
Usually when I'm packing, I'm having a drink or two. So, that would be useful.
I have been stuck in many a hotel room only to realize that I did not have a beer opener and I just bought a 6-pack. So that I now make sure that I always have a beer opener with me whenever I'm traveling.
Like a wine key.
I don't know what a wine key is. Like
I'm a little classier than you, so I travel with a wine key.
You mean a corkscrew?
Yeah, like a corkscrew. Well, I call it a wine key, but a corkscrew
What's a
would be
wine key?
A wine key is it is basically a.
I'm talking about the thing that you open the top of a beer bottle.
Yeah.
You know that thing?
Don't you have one of those in your keychain, like a real?
Yeah, I
sort of
now
American
do
mail?
because I found myself in so many hotel rooms just looking at the beer, just looking at it, begging it to naturally open. I'm Catholic, so I said prayers, and it eventually popped open for me. My brother actually used to have a flip-flop that underneath the bottom side of the flip-flop, it had a beer opener. So you always had one with you when you were flip-flopping around.
That is convenient.
Yeah, but it's kind of gross because the bottom side then is near the area where you're going to lift it up to your mouth.
Flip-flops are gross to begin with, so obviously adding a component of a beer opener only doesn't make it any less gross.
But they're very lightweight, so they're good to pack for traveling flip-flops.
All right.
So anyway, I really like this temperature scale, this temperature measure and this scale. See, maybe I do like the temperature feature. Now it's taking notice at the top.
And so where are you flying on? Wow.
We are taking WOW if it actually gets off.
Does it have an exclamation point at the end? It's like, wow. Or
like
just
Jeb?
Yeah, like Jeb, exactly. Please clap.
Please fly. We will be taking WOW to Iceland, and we will be talking about that in 2 episodes. We're going to talk about that trip if I actually make it there and back. But, I am a person who I do dread the weigh-in at the check-in counter. So this thing I'm really loving its utility. I think it's going to take a lot of that sweat away from approaching the counter.
And will you tell us how much your luggage weighs before and after? I'm very curious.
Well, sure, absolutely. I already know some clothing I'm going to bring and throw out when I'm there. So I actually think it may get lighter, but sure, what a great cliffhanger. I'm going to tell you next week. I will tell you what it weighs. And then on the post-trip show, I will let you know what it weighed on the way back. So nail biter there, everybody.
So next week we are talking about souvenirs.
I love a souvenir.
I love souvenirs. I have great stories about souvenirs. Typically, I just buy souvenirs for my mother.
Aren't you sweet?
I am such a good son. I think that's one thing we can get across in this podcast.
Absolutely. Better than actually spending time with your dear mother.
Exactly. I don't have to take her on a trip if I bring her back a souvenir.
Isn't that beautiful? Great. Well, we're going to dive in. What makes a good souvenir? What are our favorite souvenirs? And so tune in for that next week.
Until then, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And we're out of office.
A travel podcast.